folks, welcome back to another episode of the BoomBastiCAST. And boy, do we have a cool episode for you this evening. Things are about to get real, if you know what I mean. And I mean real, like really real, like some reality TV. The first time we're having somebody from the world of reality TV on the cast. And it's a pleasure to have Troy up in the building. You know what I mean? Troy DeVolld doing it big, our boy. Dude's been all over the place. Surreal Life, the Osbournes, um, The Bachelor, Survivor, Dancing with the Stars, just a part of some of the things.
Basketball Wives.
Basketball Wives, Fear, you know what I mean? Just a part of all these huge shows, also, of course, worked with the young James Gunn and the Gunn family doing some Human Z, doing some PG porn, doing some Troma's Lolly Love, you know what I mean? Starring Jenna Fisher and James Gunn. Fantastic film. Just a good body of work behind them, and it's growing and it's getting more. And without giving away too much, I believe there's a new film. I believe there might be a new film in the works for this fall. I want to cover my mouth. Maybe I should be saying these things, but I think he'll probably get into it. And yeah, dude, it's definitely going to be a fun ride, and we're happy to kind of pop in with Troy. Do you want to say anything before we roll into the app?
Well, nothing much. Other than I did grab one of his books,
Oh,
Reality TV, which delves into how to make a reality show. And I gotta say, I'm really interested. I mean, I didn't follow a lot of reality TV. I've seen a few. I mean, I've seen Survivor, I've seen Surreal Life, and a few others. And it's always I always wondered about how one creates it, how one puts it together because unlike a scripted show or a movie, you got the script and you got the beats, you got the little things like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But when you're dealing with real people with real reactions, there's nothing as unpredictable as reality.
yeah.
And you can go through all and try to move people or guide people in certain directions, but in the end, I mean, if people are acting on their own impulses, they might do something that you don't think is going to happen, or you might say, "Hey, these two are going to have an issue," and then you find out they end up, actually liking each other because reality will always be different than you expect. So I'm always curious about how one, kind of takes the unpredictability of reality and, you know, what we are expecting the predictable, points of like a normal show,
Yeah.
how you put the two of them together. So I can't wait to talk to him about that.
Yeah, we don't often get too many reality people on the show. This is our first one, and there's such a weird, not a weird, but there's such a line between kind of the narrative. I worked on a reality show once in like 2006, 2007, maybe a little later, called The Imploders. It was on TLC. Did some PA work on it, and that was a eye-opening deal of kind of catching the differences of it, you know what I mean? And so I have like kind of an idea into the reality world. Um, Through that, it was just that first episode. It was about a family of demolition people that kind of were cruising all over the country, stopping in different places. And like I said, in Lawrence, we brought down like a big stove top deal in Lawrence, up by you kind of. And I think we've driven by the place before, and I've told you that restaurant that we talked to about the shooting some stuff in
Oh
for
yeah,
for
yeah,
the new flick.
yeah.
It was in that same little like it shared a driveway
Oh,
with the
okay.
place that we brought down.
Yeah.
Um, and that was a fun deal.
Actually,
Yeah.
actually, it's funny. I forget the name. There was one reality show that happened in Boston that we actually had a mutual connection that was involved with it, that dealt with bookies in Boston. I forget what the name of it was. And yeah, the only thing I remember, it only lasted maybe not even a full season. I
Joe was
remember
on it,
seeing
right?
like a few episodes of it. And one
Yeah.
of my favorite things in it was one of the bookies was making a comment about, there's nothing better than being a bookie in Boston, because the love of the teams is so much is that no matter how many times the team might lose, they're going to still bet on the same team.
It's called Addiction. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember when I did the imploders as a PA, I walked around getting certain people to sign waivers. I remember what it was they blew up the building.
yeah,
So they put me in charge. There was a couple windows that got broken in houses nearby that the rock or the blast or whatever like broke the windows. So like when you think about that stuff now, you're like, well, wouldn't one of those rocks break through somebody's face and kill them or something? Like that's not that safe. And I remember word was out that we were shooting. So there was literally like that parking lot was packed full of people. Like people just came through to watch the building come down. And it's kind of surprising to think about it now from a production standpoint that so many people were like close to something that could have fucked them up. Because these broken windows were like these houses were past the groups of people. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
like these people could have been annihilated. The other thing I remember from that shoot, which it was I was super pumped to do it. It was probably one of the best paydays I got to. Um, but it blew my mind to kind of production, like a bigger productions almost wastefulness of money in a way, because I remember, and I told Hawkman this, and this is kind of gave me an eye open. Like when you see people get interviewed on reality shows, like what happened is the production company came in and very cool people. Um, they were traveling around by RV, which I thought was super fun, and they'd stay at hotels. And what they'd do is they'd rent out two rooms next to each other. One room would be the editing bay where they would have, the computers, printers, phones, fax machines. And then the room next to it is where they would do the interviews. So like they'd have
Yeah.
that set up to interview the people, which I thought was interesting. That was something I learned on that production, kind of how they maneuver them. And that was interesting. And then I remember when they were packing up to leave to go to the next city, I remember they just had us throw out the offices. So like I remember throwing printers, fax machines, phones, computers. They saved some computers, but for the most part, like everything that they'd move to go to a new city location, and they would just go buy what they needed, and then when they were done, they would just trash the shit and move to the next place and buy the same stuff again. And it's like, in my head, as like a no budget filmmaker, I'm like, you don't just pack it into the RV and fucking take this stuff with you. You get rid of it.
Oh, maybe the moving costs were too much. I don't know.
And they wrote it off though. Like they wrote it off as a loss. That's how it went. Cause I was like, can I just like take some of the shit? And they were like, I mean, you're not supposed
No,
to.
no,
They're
you
like,
cannot.
you're not supposed to, but like once it's in the dumpster, it's in the dumpster type deal. And I didn't go diving through it because once it went into the dumpster, like it was finished anyways.
Yeah,
But
then you'd have to fight the rats for it.
wrestling rats
Yeah,
or the animal rats? That's the question.
animal
But
rats.
yeah, that was a big reality TV eye-opening thing to me. And also, like I said in this episode, when Storage Wars came around, we knew Billy Jacks was like an extra. He's been in a couple of our films, and I remember he was playing a dude that was trying to upbid one of the big bidders on the show, and I was like, "The fuck's Billy Jacks doing in Storage Wars?" Dude? And I was like, "That's another one." I was like, reality TV ain't always real, ladies and gentlemen. You know what I mean? But it's always entertaining and fun. You know what I mean? But that's kind. Did you ever tap into reality TV in any of your days of kicking around the Massachusetts? I know that
Well, what I
Massachusetts
mean,
is.
actually being involved in
I know
reality TV.
Massachusetts is just small potatoes for hockey. Goes all over the world. Just came back from Hungary acting because he's a champion. And my hero, my personal hero. Don't meet your heroes, they say. I do a podcast with mine. But did you ever work on reality show around
No,
this area?
no. I mean, I've. It's funny because I've put my name into reality shows
Yeah.
throughout the years. I've never gotten an interview. I never got even contacted about it.
Yeah.
So I guess that they can't stand my lovely features.
Handsome
But
dude.
no, I haven't done any reality TV.
They're gonna have one about you soon, I heard. And that's all the world could want. But we've gibbered and jabbered long enough. Let's bring in our great guest, shall we? All right,
Yeah.
without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time on the BoomBastiCAST, we welcome the great Troy DeVolld. Troy, welcome to the BoomBastiCAST. Troy, welcome to the
Glad
BoomBastiCAST.
glad to be here, guys.
Hey, we're glad to have you. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing. This is a fantastic voyage like Coolio we're about to go on. It's a good thing. So we usually like to start from the beginning, you know what I mean? So where did you first like catch the bug for entertainment, entertaining folks?
Well, my parents met at a dance in 1968, but if you'd like to have the shorter version,
Hey,
um, where did I catch the bug? When I was a kid, like anybody else, I watched a lot of television, and I ended up going through a long period of time where I thought I was going to be an animator, thought I was going to be a comic book artist, and the comic book art thing led me to doing a bunch of promotions for Woody Woodpecker's 50th anniversary. And I know they were just TV commercials, but the idea of writing something and then seeing it on television later was just so appealing to me. I dropped comic books immediately and started trying to chase television. So I did some local stuff here in Tampa. We had a show called Billy's Bogus B Movies that was basically MST3K before there was an MST3K. It was a bunch of people at a bar watching crummy movies on a TV and talking about, just making wisecracks as the movies progressed. We started with Beyond the 12 Mile Reef, which was an old Robert Wagner film. And I just really enjoyed it. So later on, I went to film school, a place called Full Sail University in Winter Park, Florida. Uh, had a tremendous time there and moved out to Los Angeles around Y2K. And everything went crazy in the 3 day span of driving across country. So I pulled into a hotel, turned on the TV in the scariest hotel room I've ever stayed in my life. And there was a show on called Fear on MTV, and it was the first episode. And I saw the only person whose name I knew in Los Angeles went trucking by in the credits, and I went, "Oh, I gotta call Christo when I get to Los Angeles." So I ended up on his couch, and he got me a job on that show. That I started out as a logger transcriptionist, and by the end of that season, I was producing the final episode of the season. So everything moved pretty quickly because Survivor blew up that year, and I ended up, in that big reality TV crush where it didn't matter if you didn't know how to do it. It was like stepping into a pneumatic tube. It's like, boom, okay, now you're a producer.
yeah, yeah.
So I did that, stayed there for 23 years, and now I'm just crossing over into film myself. So it's a brand new frontier.
Yeah, so it is it is one of those it's all who you know type vibes a little bit, you know what I mean?
It is a little bit, but it's also who you can get to know.
Yeah.
And that's the part that people never talk about. Is it's not one of those things where, if your uncle's not in the business, you're screwed.
Yeah.
Uh, you got to figure out how to put yourself in the proximity of people who are doing stuff. And in those first several years, like when I stayed at Christo's place, I slept on a futon in his living room. And one of his roommates was a guy named Stevie Blackheart. I don't know if you know who Stevie Blackheart is, but Stevie Blackheart is a contemporary of James Gunn who's been in the Guardians movies. He played Brawl in Guardians 2.
Yeah.
He was Steamy Blue Liver in Guardians 3. And I ended up getting to work on a couple of things for Spike TV with James Gunn just before he really kind of exploded. I'm not tight with him, but it was one of those things where it's hard to see somebody achieve that level of success and be that good at something and not say to yourself, I really hope that someday I'll be that good at that thing.
Yeah.
So it's that thing. I'm happy for everybody all the time. If I worked with you one time in 2004, I'm still watching for your name in the credits. I'm still writing you a note every time I see your name go across the screen somewhere. And that's how you make friends and move forward.
Yeah.
It's not about who you know. It's who can you get to know.
Yeah. I mean, that James Gunn deal, I'm about a Trauma fan for a good
Oh
chunk
yeah.
of days, you know what I mean? So like, I kind of remember him when he was like, not on the radar, we'll say, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Back in those old Tromeo and Juliet days.
the Tromeo and Juliet days, yeah.
Yeah. Lloyd produced Lolly Love
Lolly Love.
that I worked on with James and Jenna.
Big fan. I liked that film a lot. That was good times.
I did too. I mean, Jenna and James were both they were so smart,
Hmm.
and it was such a well written thing. It was, I think, the first time that Jenna had written a feature length anything. But I don't have to worry about anybody anymore.
There you go.
I'll send them a note and they can just put it on the pile with all the mail they're getting from everybody else.
You were a producer on Lolly Love, right?
I was a co-producer on that show, on that
Uh,
film. Yeah.
Lloyd was in my first film, you know what I mean? And we got love for Lloyd. When I've always been curious of this with like the fact that there was traction being made. Like Jenna was obviously on The Office. James Gunn was like in the mid swing of kind of blowing up. I think at this point, I think he already wrote Dawn of the Dead, and I think he was like,
he had done the specials in Scooby and Dawn of the Dead and some other
yeah.
things.
Now, does Troma get? I know we have friends that have. I've been a fan, but I've like disassociated as far as distribution goes with Troma, because it's kind of like, why bring business into it? Because it could always be a weird thing. But I got friends that kind of have done films with them. A lot of people enjoy it. Some people don't like it. Was there the fact that there was already? Yeah.
It was more a matter. It was just James and Jenna and Stephen Blackheart and me and Peter Alton, who was the DP. And it didn't feel like it was a Troma film. I think that happened later. I think that the releasing ended up happening later. James brought Lloyd in for that cameo, if you've seen the film.
Oh yeah.
I don't know anything at all about the distribution outside of the most amazing day of my life was walking into a Tower Records and seeing an entire end cap of DVDs of Lolly Love.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, you know what? I didn't make a nickel on this, but I had a good time and somebody's watching it.
That's kind of
just fun to help people out,
For sure. That's kind of where I was going to go with the question, because I know a lot of folks, they one of their biggest complaints is there's no financial turnaround. But I was curious of what the fact that he was dealing with people that were already kind of had a built-in fan base, if financially it was Troma was more friendly to you guys, so to speak, than maybe other people.
I don't know anything about it. I never had a single interaction with Troma. It was all James, Jenna, and Stevie Blackheart.
Yeah, word up.
Every day I was on that thing, I was like, well, I could not have had more things go wrong that were on me. Like when they go to visit Larry Fitzgibbons in the office and he's trying to raise money from him.
Yeah.
That office is the office of Chris Abrego, who was the executive producer of the Surreal Life, that I was on that show at that time. And I had asked him if we could shoot in the office that weekend. We came in to shoot that scene and we were there maybe 10 minutes and the fire alarm started going off in the building. So we'd wait for the fire alarm to stop. And then 5 minutes later, the fire alarm goes off again. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And pretty soon I see a bunch of people that I don't know wandering around inside the office. And I said, what are you guys doing? And they're like, well, we're at the fire department. We're checking the fire alarms today. I said, well, when is it over? Like, well, there isn't supposed to be anybody in the building today. We sent an email around to all the tenants to say that you couldn't be in the building today. So we went downstairs. We shot the after scene where they were in the parking garage and James has that big blow up with Jenna in the parking garage. We got that done without hearing any, fire alarms. When we ended up losing a day and coming back the next day, and I internalized that so bad because I wanted to look so good in front of James and Jenna because they were such nice people.
Yeah.
And I admired them so much that I was like, oh, how could I not know this? Well, there's no reason I would know, because I wasn't a tenant. I just had an office space inside somebody else's office space.
Yeah.
But man, I beat myself up about that forever. I was always worried that I was going to embarrass myself in front of the real people, you know.
Yeah.
I was doing reality television at that time. I had not yet considered myself a real person.
Yeah, it's a weird deal like that. We'll get away from Lolly Love, but if anybody out there's never seen it, check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's, I believe, their whole thing is that they want to solve uh like homelessness, I think it is, or like just
Yep.
or peace on earth by giving out lollipops, which is such a funny kind of theme. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was a trip, and there's a lot of people in it. That it's just
Yeah.
one of those things where, as you watch, you'll be like, "Is that Judy Greer? Like, is that Linda Cardellini?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how'd you get Jason Segel in a movie that was, you know, shot for a baked potato and a handshake?
Exactly.
So
And
it was a good time.
yeah, dude, I love it. It's classic. I remember, like I said, I've been a big fan forever, and like they have their upswings of time when like Lloyd's movies are always very fun and entertaining, but they definitely go through, you know, upswings of when they're kind of releasing maybe some stuff that's not as entertaining as Lloyd's. But Lolly Love was one of the films I remember being like, okay, this is a really good flick. You were a part of Human Z and PG Porn, of course, with them. You know what I mean? I remember them.
I love it when an interview knows about the dark periods of my life. They were fun. I remember when we were on the set of PG Porn. I remember that Belladonna's husband Aiden was there on the set, and I looked at him and I said, "You know something?" I said, "Your wife is incredibly funny." And he just kind of looked at me like, you have worked with her before, right? I'm like, no, she's just such a funny person.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know anything about anybody's history when we were making it. I was just, you know, showing up trying to help out.
Yeah. And that was, I think those two projects were like more of a gun family reunion deal. You know, I think he had cousins and
Yeah.
brother were both on the Sean, and then some of the
Yeah.
cousins that,
Oh God, Sean in the Helpful Bus short was so funny.
yeah. He's he's like the Ted Raimi of his day a little bit, you know what I mean?
I get it.
That's because I think he's we're seeing more, like I think Brightburn, I think the cousins that was like, I think Gunn produced it, but that was his cousins, the same way Raimi writes with his brother and his other brother acts and stuff. So it's a pretty cool vibe, you know what I mean?
I suppose so.
So the first reality TV show, you had Fear, and
I worked on
then
MTV Sphere, and right
yeah,
after MTV Sphere, I got hired on the Osbournes. And I showed up, and the woman who was in charge of the story team was Melanie Graham, who had done SNL and a couple other things. A lot of really amazing people produced that. Like, I don't think a lot of people know, like Jeff Stilson, who had done the Ali G show, was the executive producer, or one of the executive producers.
yeah,
We had Henriette Mantel, who played Alice in the Brady Bunch movies. She was one of the story people. Sherry Brooks from Caroline in the City. We had Sue Kolinsky from Sex and the City. All these really smart comedy people working the post side on that show. And I got on the Osbournes, and Melanie said, I don't work with people I don't know. So I was, all of a sudden, my story job evaporated, and I became what they called, or chose to call, a dailies coordinator. So I would watch all the footage that came back, and I'd write notes, and I'd make highlight reels for them on VHS and put them on the desk every morning and say, this is what I saw from yesterday that might be worth looking at. So I got to be part of the story team, but I wasn't a producer on that show. And from there, I just managed to continue to fall upward with some good people. Definitely Chris Abrego, that I worked for on Fear.
yeah.
He brought me back over and over and over again for different shows. I was there for the Surreal Life. I was there for, well, a lot of stuff that you wouldn't remember by now. We'll just
I loved
say
it.
that.
I loved all that stuff. With
It was a good time.
how is when Ozzy, is that something he turns on, or is he always like in Ozzy mode?
I think Ozzy is 100% Ozzy all
Okay.
the time. And he was one of the nicest people I think I've ever met. And I can remember at the rap party for the first season, standing in a corner with Sharon Osbourne, and I said, you better get ready. I said, because you're kind of the breakout star on this thing. I don't know. I'm not. And I'm just remember standing there with her and her manager, who's this guy that looked like David Spade. I didn't know what his name was.
Yeah.
And I said, "You're going to get so much attention out of this. It's going to be great."
Yeah.
And I was right. So I'm very good at predicting people's futures. So if I've seen you in something, if I've seen anything you've done, I can usually, guess where you're going to be in 10 years.
Word up. Well, we're gonna need an evaluation of us by the end of the show, of course.
Oh
But,
no.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Career counseling has an hourly rate.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, you can open up a reality show yourself as like a TV oracle. You know, you have people come in and you read them.
That would require me getting credit for my contributions to anything, which just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
We're all phantoms. That's why I was working on an autobiographical documentary several years ago that I have since abandoned. That's called "Remember We're Not Here."
Yeah.
Because all of us that work in reality TV, there are no famous reality TV story producers.
Yeah.
Like you hear about Mark Burnett all the time, but you never hear about like the legions of people who make that show happen.
Truth. Yeah, for sure. That was a good call on Sharon, because she's definitely blown up into she's definitely made good out of the jump off of that show for sure. I remember the first time I ever seen her, Sharon.
And they're all such nice people. Kelly, I might not have known things would go as well for her as they did for a while there when she was hosting Fashion Police and all this other stuff. But
yeah, and there was one daughter that wasn't on the show, right? That's how.
Yeah, Amy did not have any interest in being on the show.
Did she live in the house, and just you didn't film her, or was she elsewhere?
I presume she was elsewhere. I was never at the house. I worked primarily at home base in post, which was we were in the same building that Vin DeBona, that does America's Home Videos, was in. Yeah. And I was right underneath Michael Mann's office when he was producing Ali, so I would hear the noisy phone calls going on above me and think like, well, I guess that's the big time. When you're smashed between America's Funniest Videos and Michael Mann, you're in a place where you can grow.
Hell yeah, dude, that's great. The with such a raucous show like the Osbournes, did you ever run through footage that there was no way in hell it was going to make it to TV, or is everything kind of they know what to shoot while they're there?
We had the best private gag reel of any show that you've ever seen in your life. Like the rap party gag reels were terrific.
Yeah. They got a podcast now too. I think the whole family doing a podcast. Oh yeah. It's really
pretty good. I've only heard the first couple, so
it's really one of the first. You could probably get deeper on. I think the first time we chatted with Steve, we talked about this, but the Osbournes was like the first family reality show that I remember that like everybody was into, but wasn't like the first reality show like way back in the 60s or 70s.
It was in 73. It was An American Family that ran on PBS, and it followed Pat Loud and her family. She had a son who was this very outspoken young gay man, which you never saw on TV in the 70s,
right?
And it was just an amazing thing. But when you talk about how much MTV changed everything up, the first shot of An American Family is like a 45-second shot of somebody rinsing a chicken in the sink. And you're just like, is this thing ever going to move? Like, is anything going to happen?
Yeah.
So you can't have that on MTV. So when MTV's reality broke, everything was just very paced up and very quick, and VH1 followed suit. They were both Viacom companies at the time.
Yeah. The regular life isn't that interesting, so to speak,
just needs a little zhuzhing. That's all.
For sure. Is that what kind of goes down on a reality show? Is it kind of like the writers put them in scenarios? It's not just really just they follow them through these situations, but
it depends on the show. Yeah. I always say, like, if you want to learn how to make reality TV, watch Run's House, if you remember that show.
Of course, dude. Of course.
And every time Run would come into the room, he would say something that sounded like somebody just said, now go out there and say this.
That's true.
That's just kind of how that show felt. But it's almost like we always, I don't say always, but those shows that I've worked on in the past, we've always started out with, we have an outline of what we think is going to happen that day. where we think the story might go. And what happens is you start shooting, and once everything kind of goes off the rails naturally, like life will do, you just follow the new path that something is on, and there'll always be some kind of story that comes out of it.
Yeah.
You can always juice it up with a good piece of interview later that explains the subtext for what you can't see. If there's two people talking and it's very friendly and it's like, are you going to come Friday? Yeah, I'm going to be there Friday. I'm going to bring Tim with me, blah, blah, blah. If there's an interview that says, I cannot wait for her to dump Tim, this guy makes me nuts, I don't want him in my house, blah, 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 then all of a sudden you've got more meaning in the scene, which is why everything is driven by interview.
Yeah.
So it just, we always start with the best intentions of trying to do everything we can in verite, but every once in a while you got to, push the music a little. You got to, bring in some interview bites to move things along or to tighten stuff up.
When in general of reality TV, like when you get them on the street, do they close that down like they would a movie, like put up, tape so just random people don't walk in, or and like
not real often. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
in a restaurant or a record store or something like that, you try to have like a section that you can be in, but the rest of the business will almost always be open. That's why, we're constantly fighting with sound and trying to figure out how to cover it. If you ever see a nightclub scene on any of the shows that I've worked on, like especially Basketball Wives, if you see a bunch of people in a nightclub, there's music blasting and you can't get the club to turn the music off for an indefinite period of time. So we started out doing a thing where we'd go in and we'd have like a CD of cleared music, and trying to get a club to play a CD of music that's been cleared, forget it. Like, they don't want to do it. It's like, we're a business. People are coming here to have fun. We got a whole rest of our thing to worry about besides what you're doing in the corner. So what we end up doing is we pull all the audio down. So when people are talking, you barely hear them speak. So there's always music, that we've cleared that comes in later and covers it as if that's the music that was playing in the club. And the people that are talking with their lips flapping, you can't really make out what they're saying. Everything we have is transcribed on the bottom. We're not making it up. It's just that's the only way that you can process that audio and have anything useful come out of it.
Yeah.
So we don't usually have everything completely closed off. We've got to have permission to be in the places that we're at. We've got to pre-clear those with the owners. But as far as, anything that might be naturally occurring around there, we don't have complete control over the environments the way we do some other places. I did a teen wedding show once where I had a wedding coordinator that wasn't aware that the people that were on the show had agreed to have their wedding shot. So we're there the night before as they're setting everything up. And this woman's literally like running in front of my camera operators, putting her hands over there. Like, I know what you guys do. Like, you're not going to do this wedding. And it's like, the people that are paying you to do this wedding signed off on this. Leave me alone. And for 2 days, this woman was just like obstructing us intentionally the entire time we shot.
You think she really didn't want to be in it, or she just wanted you to cut her a check or so? I know there's a lot of.
I think what she really didn't want is she just thought that, I guess, reality shows just showed up places and shot like news crews.
Yeah.
And she thought that, we were intruding on this young couple's privacy, and it's like we were shooting with them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I always get curious because I know, like, we got in our down here, they did a couple of, we knew some people that did like Storage Wars, that show.
Sure.
But like all the extra, like it was just the main cast, like from the people that are known from the show. But everybody else that would go to the storage locker to bid on it were like extras that we know from the acting community.
Sure.
Like it wasn't legit folks like that. That's was my question. Yeah.
Every reality show has their own threshold of what's real.
Yeah.
So the idea is authenticity over reality.
I feel like closing it down like a set would be safer in a way. Especially you talk about like Basketball Wives. There could be jealous people out there that might try and rush the set, so to speak. You know what I mean?
I'd be more worried about, those women as a group. I've seen people throw wine bottles at each other. I mean, which is terrifying to think of later.
For sure.
We had an incident on one of our reunion shows where Susie Ketchum, who was part of the original cast, there was a woman that they used to derisively refer to as plastic surgery. And this woman, showed up at the reunion, and we're talking to her, and Susie ran out with a champagne bucket from her dressing room and threw ice water all over her. And I thought, well, that's horrifying. And then the woman stood up, and there's no traction on that stage, and she face planted and went back to her dressing room and called the cops, who came out, and basically, we got shut down shooting on a private stage while the police went through the footage that we had just shot of Susie assaulting this woman. And it was this gigantic deal, which I still can't really get into, but it's just kind of crazy. You try to control your environment as much as you can, but unfortunately, reality has an element of reality to it that you sometimes have to contend with.
Yeah. I seen this viral video recently of people fighting at a bowling alley, and somebody picked up like a bowling ball and threw it at one of their heads, and it was like, and it knocked her out. And I was like, what the fuck, dude? It's crazy. Probably killed her. Yeah.
People are awful.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you. There are some people who are wonderful, but if you've never been at a Ralph's at 2:00 in the morning while one of the stars of your show comes charging down the aisle, in the meat department, yelling at you, you're making me look like an idiot. I watched the first episode and you're making me look like an idiot. And it's like, it's because I can't use footage of you sleeping. Like, you are the most abrasive, person I've ever seen on TV, and you're mad at me because of how you come off.
Yeah.
No one ever thinks they're responsible for how they come off. It's always, this is how they edited me to look. It's like, well, look, if you're, eating a sandwich for an hour and a half, and then the last 30 minutes of you being at lunch is you like beating a guy in the face with your chair. Beating the guy in the face with the chair is probably what's going to make the edit, because somebody at network was like, didn't they hit somebody with a chair? Shouldn't that be in there? And you're like, so it ends up in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I'm sure that the first time and a lot of the people get a chance to really see themselves as what they are is in a situation like this, not the rose-colored glasses type situation.
Right. Well, and I come from that school of, whatever happened is the best story. And there are people who are like, well, this show needs more drama, this show needs more edge. For me, a lot of it is like, I've been so into films. Like when I was in my 20s, I used to call John Michael Hayes at home in New Hampshire, the guy that wrote Hitchcock's Rope and Rear Window. And I would just talk to him about filmmaking and this and that and the other. And we got into that discussion about, in Psycho, which was Joseph Stefano's movie, he'd always refer to it by the writer's name. Like, it was Joseph Stefano's movie. He's or Stefano. Excuse me, I'm a white guy from Florida. I don't know anything. I don't know how to pronounce anything. But he said, they cut away from the violence, so you never see, Janet Leigh get stabbed, but it's scarier because you have to imagine it. And I remember we did a fight scene once, and I thought, I don't want to luxuriate in somebody really, beating somebody for like 30 seconds or 45 seconds. I think that's just bad TV. I think it's irresponsible, and I don't want to be the world star hip hop guy,
Right.
So, they get in a fight, somebody lunges at somebody else. And in Uncle Buck, do you remember that? I love
Uncle Buck.
Cutting away to Uncle Buck. The dance scene with Laurie Metcalf where she gets spun away and he spins her in, and they clonk their heads together. And there's like 2 frames of white. And it's like, you can feel it, because you just like, this is what it would look like if I was punched in the face. I'd see 2 frames of white and then I'd pass out.
Yeah.
So we put in 2 frames of white, and then we cut to a bunch of reaction shots. And then you go to the aftermath where people are pulling somebody off of somebody. And those fights, I think, look more violent than the actual fights. But it was one of those things where I didn't want to see people. I'm very big on like redeeming characters. I don't think anybody who's going to be kind enough to spend their time on the show and give you a part of their life needs to be made fun of or made to look bad. So I don't want to accentuate the terrible stuff that they're doing. So if they look bad in an episode, the next episode is going to be them hosting a charity event or doing something super positive. Like they're going to have taco night with the kids or whatever, because like those are the scenes that like nobody at network wants to see those. Like you shoot them because the person says, oh, well, my kid's going to turn 13 tomorrow, so we're going to throw a birthday party. Why don't you cover the birthday party? And we're like, what story is going to happen at a kid's birthday party? Like there just isn't anything. But you want them to look good so they feel good about being part of the show. Because if you're constantly making somebody look bad, when I say making somebody look bad, I mean using the footage of them behaving poorly. If you're going to use all that stuff and they're going to come off badly, they're not going to want to do a second or a third season of the show.
Yeah, for sure. How intrusive are the cameras, so to speak? Like with taking Osbournes, is it something like we show up at 8 and then we're gone at 5? or how's the schedule work
They
on?
had pretty full shoot days, and I think they were all negotiated with the family. I don't know. I didn't actively produce. Like I said, I was on the
Yeah,
post
yeah.
side. But
Still,
based on what I was looking at, I mean, they were there, several hours a day at a minimum, like 2 or 3 hours. And if the Osbournes, if they had something personal, like if they're going to go to a doctor's appointment or going to do something else, there's no reason to follow them there. So just give them the space to have the life and take care of what they're doing. I think you can make a good reality show if you're just following people even 2 and 3 hours a day.
sure.
And the Osbournes was kind of funny because it was one of the last shows, even though it was an early show for me, it was one of the last shows I worked on where they had literally, months of coverage of this family that you could pull material from.
Yeah.
Like reality shows now, and you could shoot an entire season of the Surreal Life in 14 days because if you've got to pay to have Corey Feldman and MC Hammer in a house together, you can't afford to do it for 4 months. You're going to do it for a couple of weeks.
For sure.
So they did, and they got that newspaper on the front stoop every morning and said, "Oh, today they're going to have a talent show in the backyard. Oh, so we're going to do this. We're going to do that." So you could set up stuff for them to do and create those crazy environments that they would behave naturally in, and always get good story out of it.
Yeah, because I'd see I remember seeing things with Ozzy where he'd be like just wandering around the house at like 3 in the morning, and I always wondered like, do people actually live with them, like to be able to roll cameras whenever things pop?
I don't know. There are some
Yeah.
shows where they've got like a skeleton team of like maybe 2 camera operators and a director that
Yeah.
are there overnight, like a day director and a night director. Like if you're doing The Bachelor or a show like that, you've got shifts of people that are in the house. And you also have the story teams on site that have the stash cameras, the stationary cameras that they put up in rooms. So if something happens in the middle of the night, somebody can just push record on that and just take whatever audio they're getting out of the room and whatever image they're getting out of the room so that they don't lose the event.
Yeah.
A lot of reality shows will ask you to restage something that happened off camera. Like a lot of times people will fight and then they'll think they're being slick because they'll go home and they'll call the other cast member and go, "Listen, I'm really sorry about what happened." And then they're fine with it. And bygones are bygones by the time they get together. And there's no way for you to connect the thought of them having a fight and them having resolved it. So you've got to send them out to lunch. And that's where you get all those really boring scenes in, reality shows where 2 people are sitting around, having lunch and their wine glass like this is this full, then it's this full, then it's this full, then it's this full, and then somebody's got half a cigarette and then a full cigarette and whatever.
Yeah.
It's because you had to have somebody, you had to come in and shoot those pickup scenes.
Yeah. You bring up the surreal. Yeah, Alex.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I have a question. Has there been a situation where you doing a reality show and you expect like some kind of conflict between 2 characters because of different viewpoints, but they end up
Oh,
working
sure.
well together?
They
Or
cast for conflict all the time. I wasn't
yeah,
on the second season of the Surreal Life. I did the first, and then I was off to another show by the time they did the second season. But they had Tammy Faye Baker, who was a televangelist, and Ron Jeremy, the adult film star. They put
Yes.
them together because they figured, of course, they're going to have some sort of moral conflict at some point, and it's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of push and pull, and they did something where they were going to go to a nudist colony, and Tammy like totally freaked out because she didn't want to shoot at a nudist colony, and why would we do this? And Ron Jeremy's trying to talk her into going or whatever. But they eventually sort of settled into this, mutual respect thing. Like, you're the person you are, I'm the person I am. We're going to be friends. And they ended up being friends through that season and for the rest of her life. Like even when she was sick.
Mm.
So it's one of those things, like, you can cast for conflict. You can never really guess how it's going to work out. Some people just have a weird chemistry beyond what you think. But if you look at shows like, The Real World, they've always got some kid from the sticks, he's there with a cowboy hat. He doesn't understand anything about life. Then you'll have a very worldly gay character on the show. And then you'll have some woman whose basic function on the show is to get drunk and fall off of tables. And it's just, that's the dynamic of that cast. It's cast for conflict because people don't think the same way, or some people are just addicted to being completely outspoken. I was really lucky when we did Basketball Wives. We had Tammy Roman on that show for a long time, and Tammy kind of knew her way around the process a little bit. So she knew how to talk to producers. She knew how to give good give good performance for camera while still being herself authentically. And I always really liked her.
Yeah.
So, people that you bring in because they're going to be, they're not going to put up with a lot of nonsense, that you're going to end up with fights because they're going to push back against things that they don't like. That's one thing. But I think to have people that have some self-awareness and some character, if you get lucky enough that they can overcome, the idea that you think they're going to fight with everybody, that I think you end up getting better product out of it.
For sure. To keep with the Surreal Life, I was a big fan of the Surreal Life. That first season, you had Tammy, you had Ron Jeremy, was Hammer.
Oh no, the first this is the thing is the show ran on the WB for a season before it went to VH1. So most people forget our original cast. We had Emmanuel Lewis and Vince Neil, and I just say those and my brain wants to wipe itself. We had Gabrielle Carteris from 90210 was on there. Brandy Roderick was on there. It was just and Corey Feldman, of course. And it was just a nice group of people.
Yeah.
Like they were very cool about their celebrity because they hadn't gotten to the point where they were people that no one ever said no to. Like Vince was probably one of the biggest stars on the show. Hammer, I think the only time Hammer was ever unhappy, we did the Backyard Talent Show, and Monty Hall, who used to host Let's Make a Deal, was our host for the Backyard Talent Show.
Yeah.
And he introduced Hammer as a man who's lost more money than I'll ever make. and Hammer was like, wow, we're not talking about this.
Yeah.
He was not happy. And I loved the guy. So I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that this was how anybody was playing anything out. And then the day after the Super Bowl, I had to shoot interviews with him, and I was wearing my Tampa Bay t-shirt because I'm from Tampa Bay, Florida, and Tampa Bay had just beaten his team. And he was like, really? Like, you're really going to wear that shirt the day after the Super Bowl to interview me? And I'm like, it's what was clean, Hammer. Like I've been doing this show, 18 hours a day for the last 3 months. I haven't had time to run laundry. So
Hammer is real gangster too. I don't know if you know that, but he's like legitimate gangster. Like I remember he had beef with Third Base years ago, and he like put a hit out on him to like have him deaded.
I have never heard that story before.
Yeah,
in my life.
they did that Turn Your Mother Out song, and they dropped Hammer's name in it, and like it was a real problem. It was a real problem. Like they had to have security usher them around because, and that's I'm not giving Hammer shade. Someone talks about your mother, dude. That all the gloves come off. And I don't think Third Base realized because Hammer was like known for like those poppy hits, Can't Touch This and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
but everybody loved him. That was the thing too. Everybody loved Hammer so much at all ends of the spectrum in the music community that I think that people that would take issue on his behalf might have been a problem. I mean, he himself, could not have been lovelier. Like I had a great time with the interactions I had with him. Same deal with Vince Neil. Like Vince didn't pull any of that rock star horse baloney.
Well, that's good.
Very, very easy to work with.
Yeah, Hammer always seemed cool, and like he fell into that weird place that a lot of people do, like where I think his money disappeared from like trying to help people around him, not so much like drugs and alcohol. And
he was trying to build a community. Yeah, tried to sustain a community of people. So
yeah, Vince Neil's cool though, huh? That's good.
He was great. I remember at the time, his girlfriend or wife, I'm not sure which of the two it was, she would sit in the garage while we shot the show, and she would hang out with the story team. And one of the guys, I remember I had a PA on the show that like Vince had asked him to hold his championship ring while he was on set because he didn't want to be walking around with this giant ring on. And this kid was just like wearing Vince Neil's championship ring, and like it was before we could do cell phone selfies because it was 2003, but it was still like this kid wanted a picture of himself with Vince Neil's championship ring on.
Yeah. I mean, that's early days of reality TV. I know there was the 70s one too, but like it's really become like, I remember people would go, oh, that's like not TV or whatever. But at that time, did you understand, or did you ever comprehend how big it would become?
I did not. I knew we had further to go when we started, because my philosophy has always been, it can always be better than the way we're making it. a bunch of executives that basically their contribution to the show is like, we need to raise the stakes. We need more conflict. And it's like, okay, how would you like us to do that?
Yeah.
What is enough conflict for you? And I wrote a book called And Another Thing, which is about the notes process. But, entre nous, it's mostly about my experience getting notes in the reality television space. It's just like this thing where like, well, we think this person should have done this or should do that. And I'm like, it's a reality television show. They did what they did. It's in the can. We've already cut it. Now, what are your notes based on what actually happened?
Yeah.
Don't we have a shot where the guy jumps off the 15-foot DJ booth on top of the moving car? Because I was on set and I thought that's what I saw. Okay, well, here's the footage. No, that's not what you saw. No, that's what I saw. Okay, let me get, what's the CGI budget on this show? You want the guy to jump on top of a speeding car because that's what you thought you saw? We'll get right on it.
Jeez.
But, that's what And Another Thing is all about.
Yeah.
It's just about the notes process and how to get and how to give better notes. And I'm sorry, I don't want it to sound like a plug, but it's one of those things where, giving notes in reality television is totally different than this in regular TV, because in regular TV, they approve the scripts first. And you can't really approve a script for a reality show first. They can look at those outlines and say, this is what our intention is. And the network can say, well, if that works out, that's great. And then something different happens. And then they have an opinion about what really happened. And you're trying to figure out how to make what really happened look like what they'd like it to look like on television. And sometimes it's a little tough.
Yeah.
You can get there again with the music cues and with an interview bite that makes something happen. But I don't like to fabricate anything.
Sure.
Like whatever we got that's real is always going to be more interesting.
Yeah. Well, definitely feel free to plug the books. I know Alex is reading one right now.
Yeah, I actually picked up this one.
Oh,
The TV.
by the way, answer a question for me. What are those people doing on the cover of that book? I have never figured out. My publisher loved that photo, and I was like, "What?" First of all, there's a clapboard.
Yeah.
So it looks like they're doing takes of a scene, which we don't really do in reality TV.
Yeah.
The covers always bug me. The cover of the second book is much better. It's just me in a crazy custom jacket from the woman that does all the stage costumes for Todd Rundgren. So I'm just on there looking like, Mr. TV badass. That just kind of makes me laugh, the difference between those two covers.
Yeah.
But that book has actually haunted me for most of my career, because when I go in people's offices that are executives, I go in to pitch, I go in to have a meeting, I go in for any kind of a conversation, and I see that book on the shelf in their office. I'm like, oh, did you know I wrote that book? And if I get hired on a show and I have somebody who is kind of like maybe for some idiotic reason threatened that someone who's been around doing it for 25 years is now working on their show, they'll be like, oh, well, you must know everything. You're the guy that wrote the book. And then it becomes this sort of derisive thing. I just thought, I went into a bookstore once. There were 70 books on screenwriting and 0 books on reality television. And I said, somebody's got to write it. Might as well be me.
Hell yeah. That was going to be.
Well, sorry that I picked this one instead of the other one. But
That's all right. That one, the only problem I have with is the cover.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was looking through it, and it's interesting. You breaking down reality TV, how to produce it, how to make it, the different beats, and it's interesting because when you're dealing with reality TV, like you said, that there's only so much you can do. The whole point of it is to feel natural and all that. So unlike scripted TV, where you can just write down, these are the lines, these are the beats. Like you said, you have stunt casting, but that doesn't always work exactly the way that you have planned.
Right.
So in a lot of cases, it's almost like what I would consider like improv TV, because it's a lot of just, you have these people who are playing themselves and reacting to situations as they would.
Right.
I mean, it's a little heightened because, they know they're on TV. They know that they're being
Sure.
filmed. And just the presence of the camera is going to add a little, layer to that.
Yeah.
But when anyone talks to me about reality TV, I'm like, how is that too much different from, watching improv? You got.
It really isn't. And so much of regular broadcast television is mimicking reality TV anyway.
Yeah.
It's the whole mockumentary thing where you ended up with The Office and Parks and Recreation and all those Michael Schur shows. Reality television has really informed the way that scripted looks now. I remember John Wells, the guy that created ER and a bunch of other stuff. John Wells was explaining to me, he says, when, and I think it's in that book. If it's not, it's in the second edition. And he said, when you used to do a cop show, for example, anytime you did a procedural, people would say like, oh, well, on a cop show, you see a guy get shot and he goes, ah, and he falls, into a stack of boxes off of a low balcony. And you're like, oh, he's fine. There's no blood. There's no anything. That reality TV, people knew so much about what really happens. Like if somebody gets shot, if you watch a show like The First 48, like they talk a lot about, what crime scenes look like, what they're dealing with, how people really react in the situation, what the actual police work looks like. Then scripted shows had to change and had to get more detailed. And it became harder for them to write shows that people would believe, that they could suspend their disbelief in watching a scripted show because they'd watched so much reality television about, trauma rooms and cop, police shootouts and whatever else. So scripted had to step up to be as interesting as reality television was getting, which was a strange place for them to be at the time.
Yeah. Have you ever thought, like, if you had a chance to go back in time, if you will, and kind of follow any figure or event to kind of make a show out of? Have you ever thought about like what you might want to do with that? Wild question.
It's I really haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about time travel. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
That's my life's work.
I got enough trouble trying to figure out what to do now that TV's been asleep for 2 years.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do some time travel and figure out like how Netflix decided they were going to completely ruin the making of entertainment.
Yeah.
By streaming all of these shows and pouring so much money into stuff so that the big studios couldn't match what a streamer was able to do.
Yeah.
But enough editorializing. I love Netflix. I love their content. I'd probably be very nice to Ted Sarandos if he showed up on my lawn. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. You said on Fear, you got it in on the ground level, so to speak. And then you kind of worked yourself up to producer. I was curious of like the route that like you took.
Oh, sure.
It's being more open to do whatever needs to be done, or is there like more to it?
Matter of get it. People always say like, what's the best way to get into show business? And I'm like, get in, be a PA, be a location support person. When I did Fear, my shift was 7:00 till 3 a.m. And me and another guy named Rob Perry, we would come in, late afternoon, early evening, and we'd watch all this tape and make all the notes for the story. People coming in at 4 p.m. because I knew the executive producers didn't usually leave until about 5. Chris Abrego is coming down the hallway and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "you don't start until 7 here at 4:00 p.m. I said, "Because you're never going to know what my face looks like if I keep showing up at 7." It was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. So he and I would start having, dialogues. We'd run into stuff. And that turned into me working for him for 3 years. And he just wouldn't, like if they had some other anything to do, if they were developing a show, well, come over and work with us on dev for, help the locations department out for a little while. Do this. He just kept me employed for the first 3 years. Sometimes I was doing story work and sometimes I wasn't. But I was just, making on your face. Again, it's not who you know, it's who can you get to know.
True.
And that worked out a long time. And I ended up working with him until, we did Surreal Life and then we did this little independent project that never took off. And after that, didn't get a chance to work together again. But it was just kind of a fluky thing.
Yeah. I
ended up with a lot of weird side things. I ended up getting consulted on Who Wants to Be a Superhero, that Stan Lee show.
Oh yeah.
I didn't end up with a producer credit on it, but it was one of those things where, somebody called me up and they're like, "Hey, we're developing this show out for them, and we just want to know like what are the characteristics that all superheroes should have." oh, well, according to Stan, this, and this, because I'd been a comic book guy for a while when I was younger.
Right.
And it was just fun to be able to help out. And the money wasn't as good as if I'd been producing, but it was just kind of like a nice, like, hey, help us out for a couple days kind of setup.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite reality shows. I watched that. I mean, being a huge comic book fan myself, and I mean, unfortunately, it only lasted 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I mean,
And poor Stan, I don't know. Stan, I think they got to a point where he was just showing up on the TV screens.
yeah,
That there was no Stan Lee in the room for most of the show.
Yeah.
He just pops up on your TV and hello, superheroes. That's his little Stan shtick. But I only met him one time, and it was unrelated. I was just walking down the street in Beverly Hills, and it was 93 degrees outside, and he was sitting outside at a restaurant wearing a sweater. And I thought, this guy must be about as big around as my pinky if he's wearing this sweater to look bulked up on a 93-degree day. But you can't help but admire the guy.
For sure. Yeah, me and Alex met him at a Comic-Con 7-8 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
He was a really nice guy.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of times, I mean, when you have someone as big as Stan Lee, it was more like an assembly line, so you didn't get the, like
Sure.
one-on-one time that you would like with him. But I mean, I was able to get an autograph and see him, and honestly, I think that was maybe a couple of years before he passed.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
Yeah.
still, I mean, I'm glad you got to see the guy.
yeah.
I think
It's nice when they become real, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
is, and they're nice and they're good.
Yeah.
We've had a few situations where they're not nice, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Stanley, I think he had like 2 tables in between him and the people, which
Yeah.
he was an older dude. So I'm not hating on that, because like you shake a dirty hand, it could be the end of the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
That's been the theme of the last 5 years.
yeah, that's the thing. You collect old remote controls, I heard, vintage old remote controls.
That's been a passion of mine for a long time. I started with the Zenith Flashmatic, which is one of the early ones. That's basically, it looks like the end of a garden hose, and you point it at the corners of your TV like a flashlight, and it changes the channel. But if you put your TV in the living room and you don't draw the drapes, over the time of day passes and the sun moves through the sky, your TV becomes possessed and turns on and changes channels, and the volume goes up and down.
Oh man.
I like that.
But I've got probably 200 remotes at this point. I've got
got-
every remote that Zenith ever made. I've got every remote that RCA ever made. I've got a bunch of the old Magnavox stuff. The Magnavox Phantom, which is crazy. It has a bellows inside, and you push the thing down, it just goes, and that's what changes the channel. Like somehow the TV can hear whatever that noise is, and the channel changes. If you're ever watching Saving Mr. Banks, that's the remote that Emma Thompson uses when she gets to the Beverly Hills Hotel and she turns on the TV and Walt Disney's on TV. That's the remote, the Magnavox 2.
You keep them displayed, or are they just boxed up?
They are currently in boxes in storage in California. I moved back to Florida last year, and I'll get back there for my stuff, but I've got a huge storage unit full of things no man should still have. Old reunion show scripts for shows that haven't been on the air in 15 years, that kind of thing.
Hell yeah, dude. Do you ever keep little keepsakes? Each project you work on, take a little something from it?
I very rarely do. I have on the very first episode of Fear, when they take them out. You're familiar with the show?
Yeah.
You have a bunch of people, they go to a haunted location, they stay overnight. They used to take them there, and they'd have these hoods on. On the first episode, they had to take off the hoods, and there's little hooks and a little sign over the hooks that says hoods. Well, after the first season wrapped, all that stuff went into storage, and then they realized they didn't need any of it. So Marcia Garcia, who was the line producer, she and I went out to the storage unit, and we were throwing stuff away. And I said, do you think anybody would care if I kept this sign that says hoods? And they're like, oh no, go ahead. We're just going to throw it all out. It's a little dirty brown hand painted sign that says hoods. Who cares? So I still have that. That's actually on display at my old film school. So they've got a little glass case that I'm in their Hall of Fame. So I've got like old crew jackets and a variety ad congratulating me on an Emmy nomination and like all kinds of little weird stuff. So
Yeah.
it's the
Very
closest I got to being somebody was being famous at my old film school.
hell yeah. Well, I mean, you've done lectures and seminars before. Would you ever want to go back and teach at a film school, like some?
Oh, I would. The problem is that when I went to Full Sail in 1995, 96, all they had was an associate's degree. And I've had film schools come to me before. UCLA has come to me. Boston University and I did about a 6-month dance. I couldn't go to Boston University because I didn't have a terminal degree, which they didn't think to ask me about until 6 months after I had applied for this position. Like, well, where's your master's from? Where's your PhD from? I don't have one. I just made TV for 25 years.
Yeah.
Like, and in my mind, because I grew up watching shows that were made in the 60s and 70s, I thought, well, Lucille Ball used to teach at UCLA. Why can't I? Oh, well, the reason is that now their accreditation rests on all of their instructors having, at least a bachelor's, master's, or, PhD. It's not about, professor of practice the way it used to be.
Which
But I'm still lecturing. I'm doing Story Expo again, September 27th out in Los Angeles. So I'll be there, and Chris Vogler and a lot of the big screenwriting gurus will be there. Dara Marks is doing it for the first time. It'll be fun.
So you like them getting up there and kind of doing the deal?
It's the best. I mean, I had an out of body experience last year on October of last year. On the 22nd, I was the Saturday keynote speaker for Masters of Story in New York, and I got to introduce Robert McKee. And like, if you're super into film, like there is no thing in life that'll light you up like introducing a guy whose books you've been reading for 25 years.
Yeah.
I have the CDs for Story in the car, the way that some people have like their favorite their favorite artist, like, they've got a Metallica CD that hasn't come out of there in 4 years.
Yeah.
That's me with the Bob McKee CDs.
Yeah.
So getting to introduce him was pretty cool.
You said Netflix was making things a little tough for, studios and
Well,
stuff like that.
well, just the business plans are changing. And just, the way a studio is run, they're trying to keep up with what the streamers can do. And the streamers, they were built to lose money for years. So like Netflix had a crazy war chest, which is why they could do all these different things. And they're just starting to realize where they need to pare back and what they need to stop doing. And Netflix also had the advantage of they weren't necessarily the most transparent as far as the money that was coming in. So as far as paying royalties out, that's, a whole different scenario.
Yeah.
Like you can make a lot of money if you're not paying royalties the way that you should. Like I remember Sean Gunn during the actors strike was talking about how he was in Gilmore Girls, which was one of the most popular shows on Netflix, and he made like 13 cents 1/4 in residuals. And he's like, I don't understand how you can be the most popular thing on Netflix and make a 13-cent residual check.
Yeah.
So a lot of that got straightened out. But I think that they've been enough of a disruption to the industry that the industry itself doesn't quite know how to react to it yet, especially when the studio guys like making the kind of money they've always made. Like they're not going to make less money. Just everybody else is going to make less money so they can keep the same crazy paychecks they've been getting.
Yeah.
It's a different world, and the platforms will continue to change. But I think people talk about content, like the way we consume content is different, but we are still making the same kind of compelling stories we've always made. It's just, if I'm watching a TV show on a watch 5 years from now, instead of watching it on a television, it's still going to be made the same way that we've always made stuff before.
Yeah. Even like Spotify with musicians, like they get paid. It's one of the biggest platforms, but they get paid like nothing. You know what I mean? It's kind of a tough deal.
I'm a maker, not a business guy.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
So that's kind of how I've always explained it away.
Are you worried about AI at all in the future? You know how?
I'm not. It's a tool. I mean, there's never going to be a movie studio that's just a computer sitting in a giant clean room that's going to be like, I got it. Why don't we take this George R.R. Martin book series and turn it into like AI is not going to do that. And it's not going to be able to, it's a tool. I've written 7 books at this point. The last book that I've just finished writing, I wrote a table of contents using AI covering, all the things you would want to talk about with that topic. And then I wrote the book based on the AI outline. So AI didn't write the book. AI wrote an outline for me that I then broke down into a book. And that to me is how I think AI might be useful in the future.
Mhm.
Is it's one of those things where like it can help you process an idea, but I don't think AI can be trusted to execute an idea because it's just a mishmash of so many sources that have been fed into it.
Yeah.
So we're going to end up with like Laverne and Shirley and Pigs in Space are going to turn into something else, you know.
So Laverne and Pig in space.
That's
Exactly.
right. That's right. That's right. Where do you think reality TV will be in the future? Do you think that people will it'll stay as strong, or do you think it might go back to more of like a narrative?
I think it's cyclical.
Yeah.
I think that like I can't tell you how many times in my lifetime, I'm 53 years old. I can't tell you how many times in my life people have told me the sitcom is dead, the TV drama is dead, and then, you know, 3 years later there's some amazing new sitcom or there's some amazing new drama. Like I think it's going to live forever. One, because it's one of the cheapest things to make if you're doing it thoughtfully. Um, you know, and even an episode of a huge show like Dancing with the Stars or Survivor, your
Mhm.
budget is less to make an episode of that than it is to make a single episode of Frasier for Paramount Plus.
Hmm.
So I have to believe that like the cost, the price point of making good reality television is always going to be lower than making top tier scripted. So it'll always be around.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying we're the Dollar General of television, but you know,
Well,
we can get a lot done for a lot less money.
there's like multiple forms of it too. You have like
Yeah.
an Osbournes type show where you're following a family or a person, and then you have like the Dancing with the Stars. So it's a game, like a game, like a real life game show that, and
Right.
everybody kind of gets into, like, because it's a game show
Yeah. And
for everybody in a way. You know what I mean?
reality competition is fun. I was joking with somebody the other day that I was going through my cell phone, and the cell phone that I had right before this one, I still had the number programmed into it that you could vote for Ralphie May on Last Comic Standing, which has
Rest in
been
peace.
what 15 years ago, 17 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's people like that. People like it, and as long as people like it, they're going to keep making it. And the
Yeah.
people who have hated reality television have been talking smack about it since it started. So it's still there. Well, and thank you for being the first people who haven't asked me, well, how real is reality television? I'm like, thanks, lazy reporter. Let me tell you how real it is.
Do you think we'll ever see a reality TV like a The Running Man or like a real life Squid Games?
I hope not.
Yeah.
I mean, they already did a real life Squid Game.
Yeah.
Not quite the same stakes, but
Yeah.
still quite something.
Yeah. Well,
I'm waiting for this new show that Mr. Beast is doing.
yeah,
Oh,
what's
yeah,
it
yeah.
going?
I don't know much about it, but I'm really curious to see
What's
what
the
it's like.
what's the premise of it, dude?
It's just the usual thing where, you know, a bunch of people are trying to compete to win an unbelievable
Amount of
amount
money.
of money.
Yeah.
And it's all self-financed, and you know, so he'll get it done the way he wants to get it done.
Well, speaking of Mr. Beast, I mean, he's probably got to be one of the most famous YouTube's entered that whole almost reality
Oh,
game.
sure.
You know what I mean?
I did a reality show for YouTube. It's been a long time, but if you ever look up Fight of the Living Dead on YouTube, I was one of the producers on that.
Yeah.
I co-produced the Experiment 88 season.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about like YouTube entering, and a lot of those, it's just, there's really the money they give out to the
It's
production, the money budget.
it's more work for more people, so I'm happy
Yeah.
about that. I don't care if you watch it on YouTube or on your Apple Watch. I mean, as long as you're watching whatever you're watching and people are getting paid to make it, then I'm happy to hear about it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that's
I'm not one of those lofty guys that thinks that if it didn't happen in a theater, it's not a movie, you know.
Yeah. Well, they did a poll not too long ago. I guess more people watch YouTube than like TV, supposedly, which is kind of
Oh
crazy.
yeah. Well, you know, YouTube's free. It's easier to get.
Yeah.
And if you're in a hotel room in Boston with nothing to do, it's easier to pull it up on your phone than it is to try to navigate away from the hotel channel.
For sure. Yeah. You think it'll ever rival everything else? You think, as far as like people tuning just into that, you know what I mean, for their entertainment?
Well, I'll tell you, reality television for a long time like especially like in the early 2000s where people were talking about it basically being responsible for the decline of Western civilization.
Right.
Um, reality television was something like 61% of what was on the air. If you look at the percentage of unscripted content to traditional scripted content, for a long time it was higher, especially after the last writer's strike prior to this one. Is, you know, it was a real boom time for reality TV. All of us were working like crazy. And I felt so bad about it. I would be the guy that would, you know, get off on his lunch hour and drive over to Warner Brothers and pick it with the writers.
Yeah.
Because we were trying to get in under the umbrella of the guild because we all wanted to be able to get access to, you know, pension and health and a portable, you know, insurance plan of some sort.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have our favorite scripted and unscripted people. We have our favorite scripted and unscripted content. I think it's all the same. I think when it's done well, each of them rivals the other. Like I would put Somebody Feed Phil up against the best sitcoms I've ever watched.
Yeah.
Like I love that show. It's just so positive and upbeat, and it's not a bunch of people punching each other in the face out on the boardwalk, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the YouTube thing's weird where like you'll see like people at home, like I've seen my nieces and nephews will watch these weird YouTube shows where it's just like kids but with green screens,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's like billions of views. It's, you know what I mean? It's like huge. It's a weird deal.
it's pretty weird. When we did that show we did for YouTube, The
Yeah.
Fight of the Living Dead, all of our stars were YouTube people. We had Jake Paul and Yusuf and Hannah Stocking and all kinds of people. And I loved working with them because they were just so excited to be part of the act of making a thing.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to get people to come over from YouTube to scripted because, you know, they make more money on YouTube doing it the way they want to make it and talking about the stuff they want to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Even podcasting has been, you know, you get like Rogan making billions of dollars, and
Oh, sure.
it's just kind of it's like we went reached into a new plateau of entertainment, you know, with multiple different things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Well,
we're still waiting for our $1 billion paycheck. We haven't
yeah.
gotten it yet.
I got it at
have you
least.
have you checked the mail today?
Oh, I'll go now and check.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm really loving, like, I'm listening right now to Julie Louise Dreyfus has a podcast where she interviews older female entertainers and public figures. It's such a good podcast
Yeah.
that I think, you know, any form of entertainment is legitimate as long as people are paying attention and being entertained.
Yeah.
I don't have a high horse about, you know, movies are the only real art form.
Yeah, I like it.
There is no Orson Welles of podcasting. Okay, whatever. I hear you. There's plenty of Peter Bogdanovich's of podcasting, but
That's true. That's true. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Well, Troy, this was a lot of fun, man. We thank you very
thanks
much
for having me on. I'm
coming
glad
on.
you did.
We usually end with one question. You know, we get a lot of entertainers that filmmakers, musicians, comedians of all types that listen to this. Do you have any advice that you would give to anybody that might find themselves like in a hole of like or discouraged, like running in place? Any words of wisdom for them?
Yeah, everybody's been in that hole. And the thing is I don't think a lot of people hear about it. And I think a lot of people think that there's some switch that flips overnight. And that's because of the revisionist history of all the directors you love. People hear about, like when I was in film school, you would hear people all the time. They talk about this is the 90s. They talk about Tarantino, who is a great filmmaker and a great writer. I like him a lot. But they'd also talk about Robert Rodriguez, and they'd be like, oh, well, you know, he made El Mariachi for $8,000. And I'm like, dude, the soundtrack to El Mariachi cost probably 300 grand.
Yeah.
Is you start making a thing, then a studio comes along and says, oh, we can make it better. We'll we'll ladle some more money over it and make it into a thing people would actually watch. But the origin story remains like, oh, I made this for $8,000. Well, no, you made a rough cut of it for this. And then the studio came in. Like the Blair Witch Project happened right down the street from where I was in film school. Like the guys that made that were in University of Central Florida at the time, I think, when they put that together. And then New Line came in and said, well, how about you add this component, this component, this component? And then it blew up into a big thing, and then it became a cultural phenomenon, but everybody was still talking about how it was such a little indie nothing that these guys did for almost no money. The story that you've heard about your favorite director, producer, maker is never the story exactly as it happened, because it's been filtered through so many layers of PR. They want to make it seem like anybody with a great idea could be on top tomorrow. I do believe that, but I think that there's anybody with a great idea can get into the system that will take them there tomorrow. Like if you've watched, like, John Waters, one of my favorite filmmakers of all time, the guy hasn't made a movie in what, 15 years at this point.
Yeah.
And when people talk about him, they talk about, oh, well, when he made Pink Flamingos, like, go back before Pink Flamingos, look at like the Diane Linklater story and all this other these little short films that he was making, you know, where he was trying to put short ends of film together, which you don't have to do now because everything's so cheap to shoot because it's all video. You know, I remember the first time I bought a DSLR camera, I said, no, I mean, I need a camera that I can shoot with. And I pantomimed this in the camera shop, and the guy was like, you haven't shot anything in a while, have you? And I'm like, no. We shot Lolly Love on a Canon XHA1.
Yeah.
Which was like one of the last, the giant prosumer cameras that you felt like you were doing something because you had something on your shoulder.
Yeah.
And Pete shot that whole movie on an XHA1. I mean, it was a great camera, but it wasn't like you were trying to, you know, con somebody into giving you 11 more feet of film stock to do something.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
So just, you know, stay with it. Don't buy into the overnight breakout stories, because you'll start comparing yourself against your heroes. You will always fall short of your heroes. That's why they're your heroes.
Yeah.
You know, comparison will kill you. I mean, there are so many times that I've woken up at night and thought, like, how come I'm not James Gunn yet? Well,
Yeah.
nobody's James Gunn. James is so brilliant that he just shot himself out of where he was to where he got to. He's the best writer since John Hughes, and I'll fight anybody who tells me otherwise. I mean, he gets character relationships like I've never seen another writer do.
For sure.
And I don't care if it's in a superhero movie or if it's in something else. I mean, he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's so freaking good at it.
He's born and bred there for it. Yeah, I remember him showing up at the Trauma building and like living there supposedly in the early days of his career. Just wanted, you know, made the ultimate sacrifice to kind of move out there and get the balls working. What you said was incredibly true, though. That no one said that, and that's definitely that these people that we all idolize as creators, like it's the stories aren't quite, you know, fully, you know.
Yeah, they're true, but they've just been filtered, and some of the corners have been sanded down.
Yeah.
So
It's a weird deal, you know. Yeah.
Give yourself time. You know, if you haven't made it by 23, it's not the end of the world. Stop comparing yourself to Alexander, you know.
Hey, that's right.
It's like, you know, Alexander had conquered Persia by the time he was my age. What have I done? I had a friend of mine that actually said that once.
Jesus.
Like, well, you're driving a 944. You've done something.
For sure.
Like, calm down a little.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm 42, and Matt's not too close away from me, so you know, I hope that we still have time to make it.
Oh, you do.
Yeah.
To put a stamp
I'm
on it.
53 and I'm doing my first movie this fall.
Hell
So
yeah.
it's like, it's taken me that long to convince anybody that they should throw money at me to do something. So directing from my own script at 53, now I guess I got to make up some backstory about how I got discovered, you know, sitting on a bar stool somewhere. Somebody walked in and went, that guy looks like a film director. Do you want to be a film director?
Yeah, dude.
Just say you've been sitting on the same bar stool like Norm from Cheers for 53 years, and then someone came in and gave you a shot.
That's right. And then John Waters came in and we had a drink and he said, hey, have you ever thought about making a movie?
He's making a new one. I heard he's got a new one coming.
I've heard that story. I don't know how true it is.
Oh, that's sad.
I mean, I really hope that Liar Mouth gets made. It was a good book.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, John's movies, if you look back at like the box office on them, even the ones that did great were kind of not up to the delusional standards that I think studios have now, where if it doesn't make $200 million, they're embarrassed.
Right.
So even Hairspray was a gigantic thing that's, you know, the thing about Hairspray is it just endures and mutates into new versions of itself over the years. So there's always money coming in. and good for him. It's a great movie. It was a great idea. It was very well done.
Well, Waters is such a cult director, and like with Lynch, how everybody, they had the reimagining. They did and he just had another blow up with when he did the Twin Peaks TV show again, and it's just like I think the audience is definitely still there for John Waters films. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Speaking of David Lynch,
Yeah.
I'm going to say this before we go.
Okay.
If you've never seen a YouTube series that I think it was called David and Crispin Make a Movie, and it's two young guys doing doing impressions of Crispin Glover and David Lynch trying to put a movie together. And Crispin's in there. He's like, "You got to give me the money to make this, David. It's so great. I don't know if I can pull that much money out of nowhere." Just the two of them are so funny. It's a really great little love letter to the two of them.
Shout out Crispin Glover too. I love Crispin Glover.
He's a good egg.
He is. Well, Troy, this was a magnificent. We'll have you back on again to talk about the new flick when it's ready to rock and roll.
Anytime. I'll let you know.
All right, awesome, man.
Don't get too excited. We got a long way to go. We're still waiting for the check to clear. You know how that goes. Wink.
For sure. Well, the thing with that is it's like Scorsese even, I remember that Silence movie he made maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I found comfort in that because nobody would give him money to make that, and he's Martin Scorsese, you know what I mean? It's just you got to keep going with the flow type deal. And same thing with George Lucas is George Lucas didn't want to just do Star Wars movies. He had other passion projects he wanted to do, but that's all they wanted to see from him. It was kind of tough, yeah.
Well, and if you got a passion project you want to make, you gotta lose the narrative that nobody wants to help you.
Yeah.
Because it's that thing where you can either figure out how to wedge yourself into a hole in the business that's shaped like you, or you've got to figure out how to reinvent, a door for yourself to get in. Because I hear people all the time, they talk about how the business is against them, and it's like the business isn't against you. The business is for itself. And if you can figure out how to, how you're going to bring them something that you think will have an actual audience. I've written some things that are very personal for myself. This thing I'm making this fall is a parody of the last 13 years of my own life, where I've had this grudge against this executive for, a decade and a half because of something that happened. And I'm just making it funny, like the ridiculousness of holding on to grudges in Hollywood. Yeah. And I think it's something that resonates with anybody. Like if you work at a muffler shop, you could watch this movie and go, "Oh, that's how I feel about Bill." Right. That's how I feel about Frank. It'll appeal to everybody. It's about Hollywood, which you also don't want to make movies about Hollywood. Yeah. When I was in film school, everybody was talking about Living in Oblivion and how that movie was, it's so much like what real movies are like. Just like when they watched Entourage and oh yeah, that's what the movie business is really like. And I'm like, pretty sure it isn't. Anyway, I'm having a hard time letting you guys stop. I keep starting over on things.
Hey, it's all good.
That's what we like. I mean, the thing is that we're all about talking about your career, your experiences, but what we love is going down the rabbit hole and finding out more about you, your passions, what interests you, and that's what makes a podcast. What I think stands our podcast against other podcasts is that we want to know more about the person that we're interviewing that you won't get from another interview.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you asked me a lot of the things you did, because I get a lot of those canned interviews. I'm like, I don't know how many times I'm going to be expected to defend my entire industry. Yeah. It's like, are you entertained by reality television? The end. That's my defense of the industry.
Exactly.
So how real is real TV?
There it is. That's the final question.
Final question.
Well, it's made up of tiny dots moving in an interlaced pattern, just like all the rest of television is. That's how real it is. So that's all I got.
I dig it. Well, thank you again, Troy, and we'll definitely have
fellas,
you back
thanks.
on. Good luck with the flick. We'll talk soon.
Thank you muchly. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. And ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Troy DeVolld in the building. Reality TV guru, author, lecturer, comic book writer, just all out good dude. You know what I mean? I'm probably forgetting a few things, but Troy was a great dude. And it was a pleasure to have him on the show. This is our first time having somebody from the reality TV world on the show, and there's nobody better than having Troy on to talk about it. He's done so much cool things, been part of a lot of great stuff. You know, we didn't even really tap into like Survivor that much or The Bachelor, but even Dancing with the Stars. The dude's been a part of some of the biggest shows ever. Osbournes and Surreal Life was right up my alley, dude. I loved those shows that when I rocked them all the time. And he's a good dude, man. He's still living the dream, still doing it. I know he's got his new flick he's going to be doing this fall, and keep moving, keep going. It's a beautiful thing. Great advice in the end there. That's one thing that I think no one's really touched base on is like your heroes or your people in this business that you kind of go, oh, I want to be like this, I want to be like that. You know, their stories, although that they're real, but they're almost molded so they're heroic stories. You know, like I know that like Sam Raimi, I love Sam Raimi, and Sam Raimi made The Evil Dead when he was 24 years old, you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, dude, I gotta make my first movie before 24 years old. Now me and Sam currently live two different lifestyles. Of course, I'm not exactly Sam Raimi, even though I have nothing but love and respect for Sam Raimi. I know it's very sad, but this gentleman over here is the Ted Raimi of the world, which is very glorious. But
Yes, yes.
but yeah, that was a great episode, man. What do you think? That was a great talk with Troy. What do you think, bud?
Yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I didn't know a lot about reality TV until we booked him on the show and I did some research. I mean, I've seen some shows, and actually, he brought up one of the few reality shows I did watch, which was wanting to become a superhero
Yeah,
uh, with Stan Lee. Why I think reality is at times even more looked at, and people gravitate towards it more than scripted sitcoms, TV, movies, and all, is the fact that it does kind of give you a feeling that you're kind of like a voyeur watching someone else's life, and it grounded. Like he said, that when reality shows start to really delve into like the places that sitcom cop shows all that in, and then they had to start being more realistic because people were like, well, I just watch, and they showed someone being handcuffed, and that's how they do it, but they're not doing it like that on, let's say, TJ Hooker.
yeah,
So it doesn't feel the same, it doesn't feel real. So it then ups the game of shows where they try and make it more feel more real, and that's what I think is the big kind of draw of TV, like reality TV, that it makes you kind of throws away the illusion you know there's going to be a good outcome, or the people you want to be the heroes and all that are going to always stay the heroes,
yeah,
because in reality different layers, and someone you might be rooting for at the beginning, you don't root because their true colors come out, or something like that.
yeah. There's more of a human connection, I think, with reality. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? The reality TV, it's like, well, this person is just like me. Whether you're watching a celebrity or watching somebody, on a game show or something that or that you don't know, that you follow along with them, you realize that there's a lot of you within them. With movies, it's always like the thing with the hero thing. It's always like they're larger than life. You know what I mean? They're not quite real. You know what I mean? Things go, they fall in the way that they're supposed to, so to speak. So you can kind of, you're watching a story. Whereas, and if you're watching reality TV, you're getting an inside scoop at, real life situations. Like I like to, I'm a fan of all, you know what I mean? I'm more like following people that I know. Um, like the Osbournes. I was all about the Osbournes when that came on because I knew all about Ozzy, dude. Big fan. Surreal Life. I was all about that when that was on. You know what I mean? I didn't get heavily into uh other shows like Dancing with the Stars. You know, when when I used to be a dancer, I broke my ankle, and then time passed me, and I was never able to get back into dance and stuff. But I respect the hell out of it. I know people love it. I've seen certain
But he got into
episodes.
burgers. Got
uh,
into burgers. His love of burgers.
I got into
I just
bourbon
said you got into the love of burgers.
of burgers. Yeah, I got into the love of burgers and
Yeah, burgers. I would say
bourbon too, because to help me get out of my not being able to dance. I used to be a tap dancer. Um, you know, the Bill Cosby once did an episode of the Cosby Show. Me and we talked about with Happy Anderson on here many moons ago. My favorite tap dancing moment of all time on the Bill Cosby Show, when they put the sand down and he tap dances on the sand. Very beautiful. But I like, reality shows. I love getting into people that I'm a fan of. Also shows like Me and the Lady will watch Jersey Shore. That show's been going for like 20 years almost. They had a little break in between, but they're still going. And with Jersey Shore, it's like that. I almost can't even put my finger on why we like the Jersey Shore. It's kind of like I guess, my lady fell in love with the characters, I guess, and I kind of tagged in because I didn't really watch it until she came into the mix. But it's you kind of get invested in these characters. They're not as wild as they used to be. They're more matured, I guess, and the audience is kind of more matured and settled down. So you kind of it's to not to be corny. You kind of grow up, or you evolve with these people, and they feel like people, even though you don't know them. They feel like you know them because you watch their life. You know what I mean? It's a situation like that. Surreal Life and the Osbournes are probably my favorite things that he's worked on. And the Osbournes, the show that I watched every episode when that came on. Kelly, Sharon, Ozzy, Jack. I was heavily into it. Big fan. Surreal Life. I watched that show till the fucking wheels fell off. You know what I mean? Through the different people they had roll through. And I don't think I watched the first one. You said it was originally on the WB before it went to VH1. I don't think I don't know if I watched it on the WB. We're going back a little bit, but I could have. Um, but yeah, and I know what you mean. There's a lot of people that would go, "Oh, reality TV's trash. It's fucking garbage. It's killing the narrative sitcom." And I love sitcoms, more so older sitcoms, but like there's still a few. The lady just got me into watching Three and a Half Men, or Two and a Half Men. Yeah,
two and a half.
two and a half men. Yeah, and when it was on and popping, it wasn't something that I was digging on, but she watches it, so I guess I get into it that way. Charlie Sheen over Ashton Kutcher any day of the week, unfortunately for Ashton.
Tiger blood.
Huh? Tiger Blood.
Tiger blood.
Dude, I'm with Tiger Blood all day long. Um, but yeah, I liked it. I didn't think I was gonna like it, but I got into it, and it's one of those deals. There's some type of tick or insect crawling on the floor, so we'll wrap it up so I can put it to death. But yeah, dude, this was a lot of fun having Troy on. Looking forward to having him back on in the future to talk about the new flick or just talk about things. He's a really good dude. I like him a lot. For sure, for sure. Everybody out there, go pick up the books. They're on the Amazon, right, Huck?
Yeah, that's where I got this one. This is I mean, I haven't finished reading it, but as far as I've gone, it talks a lot about how to make your own reality TV show, the different points of narrative. There's actually a story in there that we didn't get to talk about with Troy, but where he makes a comment where he was with a group of writer friends and he had to defend himself that he's a writer on a reality TV show, and another guy was like, "Oh no, I mean that's not real writing. Real writing is sitcoms, movies. That's you know." But the thing is, there is writing, and you have to. It's honestly harder because I mean, if you're writing something for like TV show, you are, you got everything planned out, you're writing. With reality TV, you have to come up with an idea of how you're going to go, and then sometimes you don't get those obvious hooks, those obvious points
Yeah.
that, so you have to go through and you have to look in like, okay, we need a little bit of tension, a little bit of drama. So go through the footage, and then you're like, well, I'm going to have this little interview moment to give like this conversation subtext to give a little more weight to it. So, I mean, actually, there's more work to it, I think, than just writing out a feature film or a scripted TV show. Which, I mean, and as he said, I mean, art. There's many different ways of creating art. I mean, reality TV is the same as regular TV. It is an art form. Whether you appreciate it or like it, that's really up to your preference.
Everything evolves, the same people saying, hey, that's reality TV, that ain't a fucking sitcom, that ain't real TV. There was a period in time when people would see a movie with talking people in it and say, that's not a real movie, back in the silent film era. So like, it is what it is, you know what I mean? And, dude, reality TV been carrying fucking the entertainment game for the last like 15, 20 years. So it's time to accept it as what it is, which is entertainment and, valuable TV watching time. But hell yeah, dude, this was fantastic having Troy on the show. And Alex, always a pleasure. When he brought up Alex, when he said Alexander, I mean, before I thought of Alexander the Great, I immediately thought of Alexander the Super Great,
Yeah, I was
my
like,
co-host.
whoa, okay.
My co-host, and I said, dude, if only I could be the Alexander the Hawkman, I'd be a happier dude. But we hope everybody enjoyed this episode. If you enjoyed it, go check out more wherever you heard or seen. And definitely, if you want to support the cause a little bit, we got that Patreon page, Boombastic Streaming, where you keep the lights on, as they say. You want to help keep the lights on. We does it big. But support us, support Troy, and support yourself, man. This is good things. Keep the dream alive and don't get discouraged. We'll see you at 5. BoomBastiCAST. We'll catch y'all on the next episode of the cast. Peace. Peace, cat.